My second participant in Brothers in Arms is Chuck Hassan. Now, this is taken at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. You probably recognize a few people in this photograph. I'm down there on the right. Behind me is Carol Myers, who does a terrific job here every year running the laptop. Next to her, Florida Boxing Hall of Fame inductee, the great Hank Kaplan. Hank was always a reason for me to come to Florida. That's the only reason I needed, to fly down and see Hank. Now, next to him in the glasses, that's Chuck Hassan. That's my second participant in Brothers in Arms. And we see on the far left, we've got Florida Boxing Hall of Fame inductee Vice President Steve Camp. It's a good group. He worked for the oil company, which is what he did. So he was in the Merchant Marine, and he sailed out of Chester on oil tankers, and he'd go to Puerto Rico, Mexico, whatever with the oil. On board those boats, they boxed. So when he got out of the Merchant Marines, he was drafted, and he got out of the Merchant Marines, and his father said, you know, you get drafted, you're going to go in 2 years, you'll probably be in the Army, you got all this background in Merchant Marine, once you volunteer Navy, you'll probably give you a great job on a big ship. He said, well, Dad, if I go in the Navy, I have to serve at least 4 years. Yeah, but look, it'd be so much better 4 years. So he said, I went ahead and I enlisted in the Navy, and he ended up on small boats in the Mekong Delta. This particular stretch, this was taken by Chuck from his Cogswell position. This is an armored troop transport, which they called them Alpha boats, but he said they were like the Panzers of the Mekong Delta. And this little stretch here is called Rocket Alley. You can imagine why. When Chuck got out of the service, he really got deeply into boxing research and just did tremendous amount of work. And first he was the authority on Philadelphia, then he was the authority on, the state of Pennsylvania, then he was the authority on the East Coast, then he was the authority of America. I mean, the guy, a tremendous font of knowledge for boxing. Hank Kaplan told me on more than one occasion, he said, in Ivro we have a lot of guys that call themselves boxing historians. Chuck Hassan is one. Well, I'll about wrap up here, but we talk about a fighter's heart. Jumping back in time a little bit, this is Korea. And I want to read you just a little something here. Early in the war, by one of the local commanders. Down in the combat units as early as September, during a lull in the fighting, the men of one company could be seen busily engaged in building a sandbag ring and seating area. Taking time out from the routine of peering over the barrel of an M1, the men filled and stacked 500 sand-filled bags, then donned trunks and gloves, slipped through the ropes for their favorite pastime. Now, I would say that's the second runner-up. That's the runner-up to the most improvised ring. And my next speaker is going to tell you the improvised ring that takes first place. That's Chief Warrant Officer Steve Badgley. Here he is in front of his copter in Iraq. Here he is at the, I believe this is taken at the Watertown Boxing Gym, giving instruction from the corner. And here's a little of his work in the field behind the blast wall in Iraq. Your next speaker, and Bob will introduce him. Thank you.
The fine line between fighting in uniform and fighting in the ring can't be found in our second speaker. He's fought and trained as a soldier and a boxer, giving freely of himself in both pursuits. He is a veteran of 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's woven boxing into those engagements as well as his return stateside. He's going to be sharing those and his thoughts on a fighter's heart. And no matter what side of the political aisle you may find yourself on, there is no disputing this fact. If it were not for gentlemen like him, we would not have the freedom to be sitting here enjoying the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame induction weekend. And on behalf of the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, I'd like to thank him for his service to our country. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief Warrant Officer, Steve Badgley.
Afternoon. Yeah, I mean, thank everybody, and like I said, it's an honor for me to be here, you know, in front of definitely some of the people I admired growing up, and people that make the sport still, you know, feasible today, and it's humbling as well, so thank you for supporting us for this. Basically today I'm going to talk about, I've had a long journey in the military. I've been about 12 years now. I've been through America, you know, through the States, been to Kuwait, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, and one huge factor of my whole career so far has been boxing. Whether I've been a fighter, a trainer, an advisor, or an observer, you know, boxing's always played a really big part in my career. So today, I kind of want to just go and like kind of share my stories about that, and I'll relate some of the knowledge that I gained through all these experiences, right? And I know there's a bunch of people out here that are also veterans, and, you know, Oscar in the back, he might be able to relate to some of the stuff I say, you know, because it's not just my story. It happens to a lot of people, and shows the ties, right? So to start, basically I have to go to where I came from and how I got involved with boxing. So I was born and raised in Poughkeepsie, New York, right outside the city. Anybody who knows Poughkeepsie, one street can be like a nice suburban area, you know, nice and happy, and the next street is kind of an inner city ghetto. I took it upon myself for most of my childhood to find the worst parts of town and to kind of put myself in those bad situations. But it is what it is, you know. So it ended up being the conduit to my, I'll call it, forced retirement from high school. So, got out of that, and then I had a couple brief run-ins with the law, you know, brief stays in the city jail and stuff like that. I knew I needed something to kind of focus me, to put me on the right path, to kind of get myself going right. My family had a big history in the fight game, and, you know, I even just used to watch boxing with my grandma growing up all the time. And I kind of fancied myself a tough guy, you know, I thought I could handle it. So I walked into the boxing gym that was the next town over. I went in, and about 10 minutes after I got in there, I started running my mouth like I was a tough guy. They had a guy half my size spinning me around in circles, you know. And I didn't know what happened, but I loved it. It was every second of it. I couldn't believe what these people could do, you know. So I focused myself. I started training. I did well. I get 4 or 5 amateur fights. And then I slipped back into trouble, you know, back in the same stuff I was doing before, and be out in the streets doing who knows what. Get in trouble a little bit again. A couple months later, be back at the gym, get another 2 or 3 amateur bouts, and back into this cycle just kept repeating for the next, you know, 3 or 4 years. Then, but during this time, I actually did earn 2 state Golden Glove championships. And when I look back at that, you know, out of all the stuff I did growing up, where, you know, I think a lot of us can agree that it's kind of a cloud, you know, the high school period. The one thing I'm really, truly proud of is that boxing career. You know, I can look back now, you know, as a 33-year-old guy, tell my kids that, hey, I won 2 Golden Glove championships when I was growing up, and omit the rest of the stuff. So, when I had my scariest run with the law, and, you know, it was one of those detrimental ones where it could have taken this path or the other path, you know, I had to make a decision. My brother, who recently passed, had joined the Marine Corps. He's on the same path as me. He was, you know, heading for trouble, joined the Marine Corps, and once he went in, everything kind of smoothed out for him. Life got good, you know, he had wife and kids, and the career was moving. So I started thinking about the military, and I was like, do I do this or not? I was kind of on the fence. But then 9/11 happened while I was in this thought process, and that was a straw that broke the camel's back. You know, I was kind of, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it now. I think I'm a fighter, whatever. So 9/12, I was in the recruiter's office. I joined the military out of a sense of pride and duty, but also, you know, that determination to fix my life. I knew where I was going. I was over 20 years old at this time. You know, it was time to make that decision. So, joined the military, and I hit the reset button in my life. Like, everything I did in New York, I had to stop doing now, and I had to dedicate myself as a soldier and make my life productive, you know, something I can be proud of. So I got in there. Little did I know when I got to the unit that the military is extremely boxing eccentric, and they would always suck you back in, you know. So I came in as an artilleryman, and I reported to Fort Carson, Colorado. And as an artilleryman, basically, this was before Iraq kicked off, you know, Afghanistan had just started. If you're not shooting things, you're not doing much at all. You have a lot of time to sit around and BS, you know. So as I'm sitting there talking with these other young enlisted guys, boxing kept coming up in conversation. You know, the stories about my career, you know, my Golden Glove, stuff like that. At this point, I don't think any of the guys I worked with knew if I was actually good or not, or if I was just telling stories. But it didn't really matter. You know, we had a good conversation and kind of push it through that way. Well, now I fast forward to March of 2003. Everything's about to kick off in Iraq. We know it's coming up. We have the orders that we're going to deploy. We're kind of on the edge of our seats for that. You know, we don't know which. Every tour I had a very different feeling. You know, there was a different climate for every engagement and time frame. This one obviously was our first combat tour. It was the first time we're going to see the enemy, first time we're going to go do our job, and first time for almost everybody in my unit. There was no experienced guys in combat, you know, so our emotions were running crazy. We didn't know if we should be, you know, anxious to do our job in combat, should be nervous, you know, we're facing the unknown, or basically just missing our beds, you know, trying to enjoy the last couple of days in America, going out there. We went, we were on the initial invasion, and the first 6 or 7 months were hectic. You know, there was no breaks at all. You know, we were going from one town to the next, all the way up north and all the way back down south. We didn't stay any place for more than a week or two at a time. We were kicking doors, shooting artillery, dodging IEDs on the road, and kind of no time to think or sit down with anything. We're just doing our job. Right around month 7, we got to go to a place called Ramadi, Iraq, and we got to stay there for about 2 months, which was good and bad. You know, we were still doing all the same missions that we had before. Nothing changed for that, but we went back to the same place every night, and we didn't have to think about anything else. So it built in tedium, I should say. You know, like we got bored, and when you don't have much to do, you have a lot of time to think. And in those situations, thinking can be like a terrible thing. You know, you just kind of think yourself in oblivion about what if this, what if that, what about home. And so a bunch of the maintenance guys decided to throw a smoker. I didn't know how they were going to do it, but they decided to throw a smoker. They made little flyers they printed out, and they put them up everywhere. I thought nothing of it. Again, boxing was way behind me. It's been about a year and a half since I even been in the gym. So, whatever. My chain of command had different thoughts, because obviously they want to have a good show at the smoker. They want to go out as our unit, how about 3-3 and 3-3 ACR, and put up a good fight. So everybody in my unit, from PFC to Major, is egging me on. Come on, do it, do it, do it. If a commander calls a private into his office and tells him to go fight a smoke, you pretty much comply. You know, so, like, all right, sir, I'll go do it, and I agreed to compete. And at that instant, you see what an expert everybody is, no matter if they fought ever before. I mean, I heard some stories about getting in shape that were crazy, you know. Go out there and just shovel the sand, put it right, just ridiculous stuff that I've never heard before. So I took it on my own, took the 2 weeks I had, trained myself, ran a lot, was running, had a flak vest and a helmet on this whole time, you know, and trying to get ready for it. We had a duffel bag we filled with stuff so I could hit it outside and pretend like I was training. Well, the fight came up, went to the venue, and show you, so, first picture. Went to the venue, and the ring was a bunch of tires that were stacked up on each other with electrical tape wrapped around them to make the ropes. They went so far as to have ring card girls in their PT uniforms, timekeepers, entry music, everything else. So they did it up right. But you can see in the back, it's just everybody's packed up right to just like the pictures Don was showing before, you know. So I walked in there, I saw everything. My nerves were raging. You know, I haven't been in the gym for so long, and I was kind of freaking out. I didn't know who I was fighting. So I'm in the back. They walk me out to the ring, and I see the guy I'm fighting, and he's the kind of guy that can scratch his ankles without bending over, you know, just long arms, real lanky. And I don't know what kind of experience he has, so I'm nervous. I get in the ring, and as I walk to the center of the ring, before I even think I'm in range, because obviously I was gauging it wrong, he hit me with a straight right hand. Right, next picture. So this is the guy I'm fighting. You can see quite a bit longer than me, but I don't think he had too much experience. You know, so he hit me with a big right hand, kind of shocked me, but also motivated me at the same time. So I pulled what little skill I had left from the year and a half before, and I ran this guy around the ring. You know, somehow or another, I was hitting body, head, body, you know, and felt really good. The crowd was going crazy. It was the rowdiest crowd I've ever fought in front. You know, first entertainment in 7 months. And at the end, we were fighting 1-minute rounds, so we had 3 1-minute rounds, and I had a unanimous decision victory. It was awesome. You know, my unit was up in arms, screaming, hollering, and I kind of, at this point in time, I verified all the stories about me, the ones I was telling, you know. And how about 3-3 ACR kind of saw me as William Wallace at this time, you know. I could do no wrong, you know. I got all kinds of stories, you know. First Sergeant loved me. It was good. When I got out of the ring, an old all-Army coach came up and approached me, and he just asked some questions. He was like, hey, where are you stationed? What's your experience? I didn't think anything of it. And then we left, and that was it. We went right back to the missions the next day, and I didn't hear about boxing. Once again, on the back burner, went back to our job, right? So we redeploy, come back in April 2004, come back from Iraq, my first tour. We go on our instant 2-week block leave, which you always get, after a tour. You kind of go back, see family, everything that. I enjoyed myself, so I came back 10 pounds heavier, because beer tastes good. And when I got back, I signed in my unit, and my first sergeant asked me to come to his office, which is terrifying, because I'm still a private first class. So, I'm like, all right, first sergeant wants to see me. It's never a good thing. So I go knock on the door, and then first sergeant's smiling, which is just as terrifying, because first sergeant doesn't smile. I walk in there, and he hands me a piece of paper, and this paper is orders requesting me to attend the Fort Carson boxing team trials, which is really cool because it released me from my unit for the next 2 months to train. So basically, they said, hey, you are no longer part of Habitat 3-3 ACR until this trial is complete. I signed in. Well, now my unit, all my peers see me from Willie Mollis up to Superman. I'm not even boxing anymore. I wear civilians every day, and I go to the gym, So I went down there, and I started training. It was the hardest training I've ever had. I went in there the first day, and I thought I was in shape. I thought I was good, minus the extra weight I put on the lead. And they had me almost immobile after about 2 hours, and that was when I saw how serious the military takes boxing. Everybody I was boxing with, I never met any of them before, but they all just put their head down and they did it. There was no questions asked. There was no complaining. Like when you see in some gyms, you'll get the group of 5 or 6 good guys that just go and do their work, and then you get the 5 or 6 guys that kind of just sit around and act like they're working, and there was none of those guys. They were all working hard, right? All the coaches, avid professionals. Everything they said had a point, had a reason, they had a program. I was impressed, so I put my head down and dug in. I disciplined, and I went through the whole training camp, and I made it, right? This training camp ended with a culmination of a tournament at the Fort Carson Special Event Center, which is a big center on Fort Carson. They show on that you can pack this venue full. I was getting ready to go fight it. Walked in, it was really nice. The crowd, energy was palpable. Basically, you could just feel it in the air when you walked in. And from the first few fights I saw, it looked pretty competitive. I didn't watch them all because I was dealing with the pre-fight nerves, that you always have. I was in the back, trying to compose myself. But they started walking me out to the ring for my fight, and I saw everybody from my unit. And at this point in time, it feels like I'm fighting for my unit. I have this group of guys. I'm a specialist at this point, actually. So E4, still a young guy. These guys are looking up to me. And I got to win for them. So that gave me a huge motivation, like just energy above energy to fight. So I get in the ring, and this kid comes out. I'm going to fight 4 3-minute rounds, which is the longest I've ever fought. I've never done more than a three-round fight, So I'm nervous. And this kid was tough as hell. He gave me a fight. I threw everything at him. I was in great shape. And I beat this kid up. And he just never backed down. He just kept coming through. He kept hitting me with counters, just kept doing everything. I looked at all my buddies. I looked at the crowd. And my new girlfriend who was in the back watching me, one of our first dates. And I had the fight of my life. I really did. I put everything on the line, and I beat this kid, got a unanimous decision victory, and I made the team. I stayed on it, which was awesome. So at this point in time, I'm cloud 9. I'm basically a local celebrity by this time. If I didn't win that fight, I'd probably still be single. And, I almost gave up the whole boxing thing. I wrote it off. So imagine if I would not have started that game with the military, A great experience, We woke up 5 in the morning, we had a run, we had strength conditioning in the afternoon, we had our box workout at night, and often I was fighting every 2 weeks, or closer, at least a tournament a month, basically, going through. So it wears you down, but it was one of the best experiences of my life. I was always sore, injured, or hungry, trying to cut weight. But I wouldn't turn in that time for anything, About a year and a half into it, I'm about to get married. We're thinking about having kids. And my nose really couldn't take anymore. It was getting a 20-year career, full time. So why not get back out to the military, do my job, put my warrant packet in, and they approved me, which was another dream come true. Military doing good things. I'm walking out of the gym, and our heavyweight Big Stu's the 225, 6'4" kind of guy, patted me on the back. He goes, "You're going to be the most badass officer in the Army right now," kind of guy. I walked out the door and didn't think anything of it. Knowledge, India, and flying, so we were learning emergency procedures, tactics, limits, then try not to fly into trees or hit a cow or whatever we do. New York, southern Canada, basically. Go up there, and I start my new career. When I get established there, I'm driving by the local fairground, and I see a sign that says, "Local amateur fights, free of charge." I'm like, well, I haven't seen a fight since I left Colorado. I should go watch these, you know. So, but what fighters do, he's out of his mind, you know, trying to warm people up and warm people in the corner and whatever. I watched the fight. They're pretty good. There's like 10 3-round fights. They were pretty competitive. And afterward, I went up to this coach, told him my experience, what I did, asked me to like some help in the fights or in training these guys at the gym. And he was ecstatic. He said, yeah, come on down, get the schedule. Called him up, got the schedule, and that started my training career, you know, where I started working out with kids. This gym was right next to Fort Drum. So there's a lot of soldiers that came in. I got in there and started working with kids initially, and I loved it, you know, just being able to relate some knowledge, stay in the fight game, go, they have all this other stuff on top of them, you know, it's kind of, we had that common bond. So they came over, I worked with them, I loved it, and by the end of my tenure after all this, I actually made 7 state champions, 5 of which were soldiers. I mean, you know, that was kind of, for a starting coach, you know, the first couple of years I felt pretty good about that. I attribute a lot of it to the discipline soldiers have, you know, to actually listen and comply with what you teach them. That leads me to my next thing. I was saying everywhere I have a different feel to it. This one was closing stages of Iraq, I'll say. It was tedious. I mean, there was some action, but very scarce, you know. I mean, not very much going on. So that's the construction phase going on in our little living area over there. It took us about 2 months to get it done, but that's the completed ring. So what we did, we just had 4x4s, you know, and some plywood. Got some stuff worked out, got some rope strung around. We kept increasing on it. We actually stole a fire bell from down the road and put it on there for a time. See, I'm an officer at this time, so it was kind of one of those cool, like he was looking up to me in 2 aspects, and I felt proud about that, you know. And so I started working out with him. A couple days later, come back, and there's 3 kids out there. Then there was 5, and there was 10. Next thing you know, I have a huge boxing program going on where I got guys lining up. You didn't even watch us train, not even trying to train. They're smoking cigars, watching us, you know, and stuff. It was really a great night, you know, great work. But then they wanted something more, so we arranged Wednesday night fights. In this ring, on one Wednesday, we'd announce people who volunteered, like, hey, I'll fight next week. We'd pair 2 up. I'd train them for the week. The next week, they come out, they do 3 1-minute rounds. And we'd have all our senior guys, commanders, W5s, you know, they would be the judges. And this was the kind of show we got. Just kind of hanging out around, watching it go on. It was really great. Like, even after the fights, which only lasted, you know, 5 minutes at most, people would hang out for hours, smoke cigars, hanging out, you know, just gave us something to think about that wasn't combat. You know, it was combat is so cool. It wasn't, you know, combat every day. So it was really fun. This had so much word of mouth that shadow programs started opening up around Kirkuk. So, you know, another guy started training one guy, another guy over here. So I had the idea to make a fob wide or a forward operated base, you know, our little base smoker. So I put the word out first. I was like, hey, who would compete in this? And there was quite a bit of response to that. So like, all right, I need the equipment. So with the NWR USO, they had all the equipment we needed for ring and all that. They let us use the USO stage, which was really nice. And then I had to take the chain of command, which is the most difficult. Combined to win them over. So he signed off on it, and we had these fights, right? So to show you how much of a show we had for this, the band Filter, who sings Hey Man Nice Shot rock band from, you know, 90s and present, came and played 2 weeks before. When they came, they had 200 people that showed up and watched them. When I had my smoker, we had 600 people. But you can see it from the flyer. But that's the crowd we had for one smoker. We did it up. I mean, we had somebody sing the national anthem. I'm a pilot, so I got Eric got to fly over. You know, so we had Eric got to fly over. Pentagon Channel came and filmed it. You know, put commercials out there and everything else for it. It was a huge event. You know, everybody was so rowdy, just like the first one in Iraq. Great night. You know, we had right around 10 fights. We did 3 1-minute rounds, so we didn't have to burn anybody out or, you know, risk anything from the team. But it was great. Every punch, you know, got it. Standard, like just big action. Every time But picture, all these guys that fought have not seen boxing gloves within, 4 to 6 months before then. So nobody had any fights. They all learned everything in Iraq while performing their missions. So for what it is, they're pretty good, and they really got a blast out of it.
Maybe.
And, yeah. But, every fight was just like that. They all went toe to toe, nobody backed down. Stories of that night went through the rest of the tour, and still, if I see anybody that was in warring with me, they still bring it up. The one thing I'm really proud of this is I had a buddy that actually, he was in the instructor pilot course with me recently, that went to Five Warrior Iraq 2 years after I left. And he said that there's still a boxing program going up there. So after this, we finished that tour, we head back home. Again, I went back to work tours to plan anything because we had a grand total of 11 months off between this Iraq tour and our next Afghanistan tour. Well, in that 11 months, we had 2 month-long field problems, we had 2 gunneries, and we had a field problem on a field drum. So really, I had no time at all, to get ready. Now, in between tours, I also had the honor, despite a 5-year layoff from any kind of sanctioned competition, to fight professionally in Madison Square Garden, which was a dream come true. 100%. I will say that a combat firefight and a prize fight are very, very similar. The fortitude it takes to get in the ring and put yourself in harm's way, and the confidence in your ability to perform and do what you have to do in the ring is kind of parallel on both levels, right? The one thing that'll separate a prize fight from a combat gunfight is the crowd. The crowd is so intimidating. So I walked out of the garden in awe. I'm looking at the thousand people that are up there. And I went out to the ring. Couldn't believe I was doing this. I got in. I started out pretty strong. And at the end of the fight, they raised my opponent's hand. But I had a grin on my face from ear to ear. I couldn't believe I was looking up at the lights of the garden and everything else around. And I had a blast. It was the best night of my life, and an honor to say I fought at the Mecca of boxing. 2 good things from this. Well, one relates to the military. When I was getting approved for this fight, I had to get approved through my chain of command. Now, for an aviator, anything that can get me knocked out or pass out takes nothing short of a holy act to get me back on flying status because, the head trauma and all that kind of stuff. So I had to put it through. Luckily, my colonel at the time was a former West Point boxer, and he still remembered it as like the best time of his life, even though it was like 20 years ago. I went up to him, he jumped at the chance to sign me up. Also, I met Greg Sorrentino, who is local from Syracuse, New York. And Greg Sorrentino trained underneath Carmen Basilio, worked underneath Angelo Dundee. He fought Michael Dokes and Trevor Berbick as a professional. And then when he retired, he worked as an assistant under Eddie Futch in Las Vegas. So his resume spoke for itself. He was so pro-military that he jumped at the chance to help me out, which was awesome. So He took me in, he trained me for what time I had to, he got me down the weight, and then become a really good friend. My family and his family bonded. It was a great side effect of this fight, which will come and play in a little bit. So the next tour is right on us already, going to Afghanistan. I brought all my stuff the Watertown Area Box Club gave me, shoved it in a container, shipped it over, thinking everything would be good. Well, we get to Afghanistan, my containers have to go through Pakistan. Pakistanis felt obliged to pilfer our containers on the way out. So when our containers arrived up, there wasn't anything in it. There was not a scrap of my fight gear. You know, kind of my Afghan boxing program was out the door. Nothing I could do about it. Upsetting, but you know what it is. I wrote Greg in a letter telling him what happened. Less than a month later, I get 3 giant boxes in the mail that have everything you need for a professional fight gym in America. You know, everything. I couldn't even ask for anything else from it. So it was back up and going. It was amazing. This time, though, we were inside. We had a hangar. I made a little makeshift ring that you can collapse. You know, we had a mechanical hoist that lifted engines out of vehicles and aircraft, and we used that as a heavy bag holder. We just hung the heavy bag on it, heated it up, took it off, and we were done. We made a speed bag mount. Now, this tour, we didn't expect too much because of the slow pace of our last Iraq tour. So we got to Afghanistan. It had been going on for a while. It should probably be pretty slow. Man, it was a Wild West. 100%. Afghanistan is a different place. So Wild West with really big guns, I call it. The most kinetic tour I could have imagined, and time was very limited. We couldn't do a smoker. My crew was less because we worked so many extra hours. I had about 10 to 12 people that worked out consistently with me, and they were really, really dedicated. They loved every second of it. A lot of them are still fighting amateur. And I enjoyed that one-on-one kind of integration with these soldiers going through. So I went to Afghanistan. We ran this whole tour, and it was good. Like I said, it was just very, very kinetic. The one thing I took out of this tour is that the heart of a fighter that we're talking about, you know. What kind of person goes out there and flies 8-hour missions, a lot of time under constant heavy enemy fire, worrying about coming home themselves, worrying about the ground guys getting home, all this other stuff. When they get back to base, the way that they blow off steam is by going and fighting another soldier. You know, I mean, I didn't realize at the time, but I mean, there's warriors doing through these guys. You know, their downtime from fighting is fighting. You know, and it was it meant a lot to me that I was able to do something for these guys when they're over there. So now, I came back from Afghanistan. I PCS'd before I moved stations to Fort Rucker, Alabama again. I'm now an instructor pilot. I train kids out of my garage. I'm about to start a youth boxing program on post. And I don't know, see what happens next, you know, for the chapter that goes that way. So, what have I learned from these experiences, close it up, is that, you know, the fighter and the soldier, the mindsets, you know, they parallel. You know, when you have that obvious, you know, the dedication, determination to succeed, you know, you never quit mentality, you know, it kind of goes the same with both of them. When I'm a soldier and I get into a firefight, you're not leaving until mission's complete. You know, that's just a job. When you're a boxer, you step into the ring, you're not leaving until that final bell rings. There's just no way you're not going to So that was very, very similar for that goes. You know, the fortitude to put yourself out there and really work that kind of stuff. And like I said, to be able to go out and do these combat missions and come back and blow it off by boxing was unparalleled to me. You know, I thought it was great. One of the things that ties soldiers and boxers is the ability to exploit controlled depression, you know, in, you know, the pre-mission brief or the locker room warm-up, to where we all know what's going to happen. We all know what we're in for in the next hour or so, but we all joke, make light of things, you know, exert that relaxed exterior, and make it an easy environment until it happens. And when action happens, all business, you know, through and through. And I think that's, you know, the heart of a warrior that goes there. This is why the military embraces boxers with such esteem, you know. That's why that our coach, who is a staff sergeant, routinely gets lunch and meals with generals who just respect him and his fighters. That's why, you know, the soldiers always flock to the MWR to watch the fights on TV. And after our local fights, they sit outside and they wait to talk to us, just get a story about that fight or a training tip or something like that. That's why we endured after hours of combat mission. We come back and we fight the sports, you know. We fight boxing after that. You know, they're so similar that I can honestly say that I'm equally proud to be a fighter as I am a soldier, because, you know, in the end, it's kind of the same. So we are one and the same the way we do it. The way I want to finish this is there's a video I'm going to show. If you remember that smoker, the guy in the green shirt was my good friend, Badgley. He was killed in action, Afghanistan, June 5th, 2011. He fought that smoker. He had multiple amateur bouts. He really embraced